Hi everyone, welcome back to Project No Buy. In today's video we're going to be doing Chapter 6 in To Buy or Not to Buy and talking about countering the pressure to consume. So this chapter starts with talking about how we have to still do some shopping, right, for the essential goods of life, and how there are some kind of magnets that kind of pull us towards the urges to shop. So we'll be going through those. And I know this is still something that's relatable to me and still something I'm trying to navigate. So I will be doing these with you as usual, as always, if you want to partake, so that I can reinforce these values and these methods of coping for the no-buy months ahead. So as we all know by now, there's endless sources of manipulation from stores, from TVs, from magazines and catalogs at the time this book was written, and from influencers online. And so we've got to demagnetize, we've got to counter that pull to buy by having a strong center within ourselves. So the first step this book recommends is being acutely conscious of the existence and strength of the pull. Recognize how and why it resonates within you. So again, a lot of the chats that I've been doing on this channel about my own desires and reasons that I've bought things or wanted things and later regretted these things. You can do that for yourself as well. The second thing is to keep your distance, reduce your exposure to buy messages. Avoid them whenever you can. So again, the common advice of unsubscribing to email lists, not watching influencers, not watching any kind of media at all, perhaps in extreme cases, avoiding going to the shops, avoiding passing routines that kind of set you up to shop. Third thing is to find and strengthen your own center of gravity. Ground yourself in your priorities, your values, your goals, and create a solid plan for your next shopping trip. Fourth is when you do shop, slow down and shop mindfully so you don't get carried away. Finally, if you need to, reach out for someone who can help pull you out of the worst of the storm until you can get your bearings. And honestly, this might be, the last point there, might be something that I need to work on in terms of finding a real life shopping support buddy, because I've been doing this channel for a year and a half now, and while it's significantly helped, and while I would say that it has helped me become a more conscious consumer, I don't know that I can do a successful no-buy without a real-time, real-life, somebody who knows me shopping support buddy. So we might revisit that later. And as I've had more time in my city, in my job, I might have a couple of candidates in real life who might be willing to fulfill that role. We'll have to wait and see. So the author April Lane Benson then talks about 6 strong shopping magnets here: malls and standalone stores, internet shopping, TV commercials, magazine ads, catalog shopping, and TV shopping channels. Before she goes into those, though, she talks about shopping versus recreation, which to me is a very important point. So she starts off by saying how many women view shopping as a form of recreation, and they prefer this to seeing a movie or eating a meal in a restaurant. Most men see it as work and don't expect it to be fun. However, men don't equate the time they spend browsing in book, record, or computer stores or on the internet with the time women spend in clothing, jewelry, and shoe stores. So there's a little bit of a gender misconception here, or bias, I guess. And regardless of gender, in order to stop over shopping, your recreational outlets cannot also be retail outlets. The thrill of the hunt tugs you into a magnetic field designed to cloud your judgment and extract your money. So even when shopping is prompted by mundane necessity, something you actually need, in other words, you can still get caught up in a buying frenzy. And this is something that happened to me before. My first failure of the no-buy year 2024 was prompted by being on a shopping website to buy something for someone else, a gift for somebody that was allowed on the no-buy, and then seeing things and wanting things and buying something for myself at the same time. Here it also says, if shopping even starts to feel like skydiving or safari hunting or great sex, you're gravitating towards dangerous over-shopping territory. So if you're getting those feelings, the adrenaline, the heart racing, rational considerations leaving you, then you've got to start doing something else. You've got to get yourself out of there. You've got to not give into the labubu consuming craze, the gambling, the blind boxes, the emotional roller coaster. It may take a profound change of habit, and you'll certainly have to make a substantial attitude adjustment, she says, but it's a crucial step towards stopping over shopping. She shares a correlation. Paco Underhill's books, I guess, share a correlation between how much time people spend browsing and how much money they spend. So unsurprisingly, if you browse, you're going to shop. So a reduction in the time you spend just looking, just touching, just browsing can result in a corresponding reduction in things that you actually buy. So the next section of the book is about how advertising is powerful and inescapable, and is nothing but false promises and basically how advertising shows you a feeling that you can get through a product, allegedly. So advertising promises you a feeling and hooks a product onto it, is how she words it here. Growing up, we imagined that its purpose was to inform, to spread news and information about products and services. But in truth, most advertising has a sole and single-minded objective: to create in each of us the desire to buy what we don't need. And again, this is something that we might be aware of in even these 6 shopping magnets, those being the malls and standalone stores, and how we're manipulated in physical retail stores. This might be something we're familiar with. We've heard the tricks and tips, the music in the background, where things are placed, how we have to navigate the stores, how we have a cart versus a basket or whatever. The next avenue of internet shopping, once again, we kind of have become familiar with the tips and tricks retailers use. Discount codes and coupons, gamified shopping, serving you numerous sponsored options when you search things. There's a shopping tab on search engines, TV commercials with their promises that they can't actually deliver. And so you try to avoid the commercials. In this day and age, they're talking about using a service like TiVo that enables you to not watch the commercials. I guess in this day and age, it would be paying for a subscription tier that doesn't have commercials. Magazines, words, and pictures. If magazines are a danger zone for you, don't read them. The best defense is a good offense. Also noting that the environment you see in magazines is carefully assembled to call up longings for your ideal self. Catalog shopping, stories that sell. Again, the methods here to help with those are avoiding catalogs from reaching you, so stopping that junk mail, throwing them away without looking at them if you get them, and basically avoiding making catalog orders, since once you start with that, you might start getting personalized offers. And I know catalogs, at least where I am, aren't really a common way of ordering anything or shopping, but all of these pieces of advice apply to kind of any shopping medium. The last one here is the TV shopping channels, friends in your home, which perhaps is the most similar to the modern day influencer on our phone screens. So for an overshopper, these channels are simply too seductive. Don't go there, stay away. So again, it's the QVCs, these are not retail stores where you're able to look at the product in real life, but it's all kind of fabricated, uninterrupted, dedicated, intimate, high-pressure sales machines, staffed by professional pitch people who bring virtual evangelism to their craft. So again, apply that to any influencer. You can apply it to me as well, although there's nowhere that I'm going to tell you to put your money. So it might be less dangerous in terms of vetting the influencers that you choose to watch to make sure that there's no funnels to products to buy or even services. She also mentions the pressure tactics that channels employ, the shopping channels, but it can be applied anywhere, online shopping or influencers or sales or, from corporations directly, whether it's the ticking clock, dwindling supply, or the one-time only incredible bargain price. Don't for a moment suppose that the sellers are meaningfully connected to you. Paid salespeople, influencers, aren't your friends. If they were, they wouldn't be trying to sell you costly and unnecessary items that are likely to leave you feeling lonely, guilty, or defeated. Now in your journal, create a page for your danger zones. Under each one, write the 3 most important strategies you've checked off for resisting the pull, and create 1 additional strategy that's particularly suited to your own needs and vulnerabilities. So again, this could be avoiding the danger zones, reducing your exposure, or choosing creative, smarter alternatives for meeting your material needs. For example, borrowing something and making it feel like your own. The next segment is about resisting the social pressure, which, while we expect it from salespeople, can come from anybody in our lives. So neighbors and acquaintances, close friends, nearest and dearest family members. And resisting these tugs from societal pressures feels uncomfortable, awkward, and even risky, she writes. Particularly for overshoppers who as a group have less self-esteem, less confidence in web repair than other shoppers, perhaps. I added the perhaps because I'm not comfortable with making such a bold statement myself. But April Lane Benson needs no qualifiers. So the next section is kind of based in practicing saying no to all of these societal pressures. So whether it's salespeople, having a polite no thank you for neighbors or friends, or having ways to redirect. The last section is about buying for others. If you overshop for significant others, family members, or close friends, it's important to ask yourself why. You can't manipulate the feelings of important people in your life by overgifting them. It will ultimately make a good thing bad or a bad thing worse. And if you're pressured for gifts or donations or sales, heaven help us, I guess in the case of MLMs, by significant others, family, or friends, you have to take stock. And she's got a list of questions here for you to ask yourself. Why am I buying this for this person? How do I feel about buying it? Does he or she need it? Do I need to be repaid in some way for this gift? And do they have room for this in his or her life? So I have kind of talked about this, I think, back around Easter time, where buying a big Easter basket for somebody is more of a burden than a blessing in many cases if it's stuff that that person doesn't actually need or doesn't really have a use for and now has to find a place to put it. Heaven forbid they need to buy something to organize their space with the new influx of stuff that you've just given them. And then there's another category of buying things for your children, because that's particularly tricky given that when they're small, you have to buy everything for them. And I guess the lines can easily become blurred there if somebody's over-shopping problem extends into buying things for others. But she reminds us that an abundance of research shows that placating kids with material rewards hinders their social and psychological development. So buying them things they don't need is actually bad for our kids as well. Some statistics here share that the average American first grader accumulates a staggering 70 new toys a year, along with an unprecedented number of other possessions. I personally find this a little hard to believe, but then again, I guess every time I go to someone else's home, I am repeatedly surprised by the amount of visible clutter. And again, I'm not repulsed by it or anything like that. I'm not judging, or I try not to, but I am surprised because it's not the case in our home, or not how the people in my home prefer to live. In other words, I guess the people I live with get overwhelmed by having a lot of stuff. And when I go to other people's houses with more people that don't really care, I guess, or more people for whom that doesn't bother them, it does surprise me to realize that there are people who are comfortable living this way. And it's impossible to not sound judgmental when I'm talking about this, it feels like, but that's really not the intention here. It's just something notable. It, I guess, helps me believe these statistics that I sometimes come across in research like this, that people accumulate so many new things per year. And oftentimes these are things that come in and out of our lives, right? Like toys people get in first grade probably aren't still there in 10 years when that child is a teenager. And so these things have a fairly quick rotational cycle. And it does explain how the waste problem is growing and how the clothing market is exploding, and the waste clothing is also exploding as far as being a problem. And while it feels like we may be helpless to actually make a difference, I think, once again, when I visit real houses of real people, I'm reminded that every little house, every, whatever house, whatever size house, every house makes a difference and has an impact. And the best we can do is manage our own personal choices and personal impact and our own responses to societal pressures, our own shopping behaviors, and make our own center of value the priority. And in doing so, we'll be making the biggest difference that we are capable of making. So again, there's another journal prompt here about identifying, avoiding, or deflecting social pressures to buy. You can start a new page in your journal for it, and note your 3 most challenging sources of social pressure. If you need to write a script to practice when you're confronted with that source, you can do so, practicing that gentle no thank you and redirecting. We recognize the power of these forces to manipulate our desires and make us want and buy things. And we then arm ourselves with rational strategies for countering these measures. And with that, we reach the next chapter. This past one was a little bit shorter. So chapter 7, the next month's entry, will be about mindful shopping. Shopping without over-shopping is possible. And with that, I will say bye for now and see you in the next one.